Hello there folks, welcome back to the Chap's Guide. My name is Ash and I am your host on this journey through men's style, self-development and personal grooming. Now as we progress on our individual journeys towards Chap Nirvana, that destination where we will be sartorially dapper and well turned out individuals, we all make a few missteps along the way when it comes to the things that we buy. Now I know that's happened to me many times. I put that down to the heady days of the 1980s and the influence of those quite brash television series like Miami Vice, which kind of steered me a little bit astray when I was in my formative years as a young chap. And there's lots of evidence to prove that. However, we hope as we get a little bit more experienced and with time under our belt, we make less and less of those purchasing mistakes. Well, I still make them. I still make the odd purchasing mistake, and I've got 8 items today to tell you about where I wish I hadn't bought those things. Now the first item which I wish I hadn't bought was one which I did so within the last 12 months, and it's a fragrance because I really enjoy men's fragrance. It's a big part of my daily life. I never kind of leave the house without some pleasing aroma about me. And a little while ago, I think I saw a YouTube video where somebody was talking about a rather cheapy fragrance called Pinot Silvestre. And I liked the sound of it. It was a fougere, it was a chypre, the type of fragrances which I tend to like. And at only £11, it sounded like a good gamble. So I sent away for one. I think I bought it from Amazon and it was delivered shortly afterwards. And it's got a kind of attractive green looking appearance to it. It totally looked like the sort of things I would tend to enjoy. And I went against something I would never do. I bought a fragrance that I had never smelled myself. And when it turned up, it was bloody hateful. I did not like it at all. And the reason I don't have it here to show you today is because I immediately gave it away to my father, who will basically wear anything that I give him. He's not a discerning fragrance connoisseur such as myself. So I broke a golden rule when it comes to fragrance. Never buy something that you haven't put the Mark 1 nose to work to test beforehand, because it doesn't matter what it looks like. It doesn't matter what its marketing is. You know, it may have some really trendy marketing with Johnny Depp in a desert telling you how wonderful their fragrance is. But if you haven't smelled it, you don't know if you're going to like it. So do not punt your money at something which you may hate when it arrives. Learn from my lesson and always try a fragrance, preferably more than once, before you buy it. Now the next item I wish I'd never bought, I bought quite a few years ago now, and I bought this pair of Ray-Ban aviator sunglasses in, I think it was Edmonton Mall when I was in Canada once. And I'd always fancied these aviators. They looked so cool and trendy when I saw them on other men. And I went into the Ray-Ban store, purchased these, and from the get-go, they never really suited me. For whatever reason, the shape of my face or whatever, these glasses always end up moving down my nose as the day progresses. And I spent all day poking them back into place. I've even tried to rectify it by putting little glasses holders on the edges of the arms so that they hook around behind the back of the ears and stay in place. But it's a kind of bodge fix, and whilst I would absolutely recommend aviator glasses for most men, they fit most men's faces, again, you've got to try things, see if they work for a while, because for these, I paid quite a lot of money for these, maybe a good few years ago, more than 10 years ago, and they have stayed in a drawer at home ever since. Probably going to pass them on to my son very shortly. Now he's getting into that sort of thing. But for me, that was one pair of glasses which I now regret. These days, I realise that the glasses which suit me best tend to be I quite like acetate frame glasses with very high quality lenses. So your cheapo aviators, not for me anymore, and certainly a regret on my purchasing journey to Chap Nirvana. Now the next item I regret buying is this here. This is a leather sort of cafe racer style jacket, which I got about 2 years ago, and I mistakenly thought to myself, maybe I was going through that sort of midlife crisis, and I thought, I'm very boring, I'm very staid in the way that I dress. I tend to wear Harrington jackets in place of something like this. And I thought, maybe I need to venture into something a little more cool and trendy. And I tried this nice brown colour cafe racer jacket. It wasn't terribly expensive. It's made of lamb leather, so it's fairly nice quality. And within itself, I don't argue with its look, but it just never suited me because I'm quite a conservative guy. And if I had put my mind to it, I could have guessed that this was going to look too young for me. I was probably 52 when I bought this jacket, and I'm guessing I was 10 years too old to effectively pull it off with the lifestyle that I live. I'm not saying it's the way that everybody should go. Surely you can wear anything you want at any stage of life. But for me, it just didn't fit in with my lifestyle. It just didn't look right. My wife actually laughed when she saw me wearing it for the first time, and I have never worn it since. I would hazard a guess, I have worn this jacket on 3 occasions. So even though it was fairly inexpensive, it was still one of the most expensive jackets I've ever bought because I've only worn it about 3 times. Now the next item, which I regret buying, it's kind of a brand rather than a thing, but that is moleskin notebooks. Now for many, many years, when I first got into journaling in any sort of serious way, I started using moleskin notebooks as my journals of choice. And I maybe used them for about 5 or 6 years. They were okay. My first sort of foray into higher quality stationery. However, it didn't take me long before I started hearing that other quality journals, particularly paper quality, could be found better at a similar price elsewhere. I now use Leuchtturm journals because they have a higher quality paper, much better with a fountain pen, but equally I could have used Rhodia or Clairefontaine, 3 brands, which I absolutely would advocate now over Moleskine. But I remained loyal to the brand for far too long when I should have actually explored a little bit more, tried a few different brands, because had I done so, I would have found a much better, much more fulfilling writing experience elsewhere. So from that point of view, and this really relates to my misadvised brand loyalty, I regret buying Moleskine journals for the length of time that I did and not trying other brands which actually are far better for a very similar price. Okay, now the next item, which I really regret buying, is the most expensive item that I'm going to talk about today. And as I unpeel it from my wrist, it is my Tudor Black Bay GMT wristwatch. Now I've had this watch for, I'm guessing, getting on for about 5 years. And at the time I bought this watch, I was relatively new into the wristwatch luxury world. I had a Datejust Rolex, I had a Datejust Submariner, and I was very keen to get my hands on a GMT watch. I felt it was the ideal complication to suit my lifestyle. Having people that I know living outside the UK, so it'd be useful to track that extra time zone that the GMT offers, but also the nice coloration that you get, the blue and the red Pepsi style on the bezel of a GMT watch seemed to be perfect. And my ideal choice would have been a Rolex of maybe a GMT Master 2 in the red blue, but they're impossible to get your hands on, so I thought to myself, I'm going to compromise. I will buy the next best thing in my mind. That was the Tudor Black Bay GMT, relatively recently out at the time, in 2018 or so, and I thought to myself, this is the watch for me. I went into a store and I tried it on. And I immediately thought it was a little bit chunky. It's 41 millimeters in diameter and it's about 15 millimeters thick. So it's quite a beast on your wrist. And I tried it on and I thought, it looks a bit big. I put it back. I came back to another authorized dealer, maybe a few weeks later. I tried it on again. And I thought to myself, nah, it's not quite that big. And then I tried it on a third time and I placed an order. And basically, in hindsight, I now know what I was doing. I was slowly but surely brainwashing myself to believe this was the right watch for me, when in essence, from the get-go, my mind wasn't lying to me. It was too big for my wrist size. Now, it's not too big for everybody. If you've got a large wrist, a watch of these proportions may be perfect for you. But for me, a medium-sized guy with a medium-sized wrist, a large, chunky wristwatch like this isn't right. So I bought it. I spent £3,000 on it, brand new from an authorised dealer. I didn't get on with it from the get-go. I really didn't love this watch. I swapped it over onto a leather band to try and get a better fit. I wore it a whole summer, but I didn't love it. I took it off, I put it back in the safe, and I didn't wear it for about 3 years. And I got to be honest, this is probably the first time I've worn this watch in 6 months, and I'm unlikely to ever wear it again, because when my son is just a little bit older, it's going to be his, because he's a bigger lad than me, he's got bigger wrists, and it's going to fit him better. So from that point of view, my regret is that my initial reservations, I should have stuck with them. I overrode my own thinking because I wanted the thing so much. I overlooked the practicalities that it was too big and not right for me. And I brainwashed myself into making that decision. So the lesson really is sometimes when you see something and it doesn't initially appear right, follow your gut instinct. Do not talk yourself into buying something which really isn't right for you, or you'll end up like me and spend a pile of money on something that you've never worn. Now the next items, which I regret buying, but at the time it was kind of a necessity and I was forced into it, is cheap quality accessories for my outfits. Because in the early days, when I didn't have a lot of money, and I certainly didn't have the confidence to invest heavily in quality accessories, I used to go down the cheapest possible route. So I used to buy, just like this one, a polyester tie, or polyester pocket squares. These items, which effectively are made from a form of plastic, and to anybody who's in the know when it comes to the Sartorial items, you can tell polyester immediately, or synthetics anyway. I mean, I always err on the side of caution, and I aim to purchase natural materials if I possibly can, because polyester, or the various man-made materials, they might have different names, they don't feel the same, they don't look the same, they have a certain shine to them in reality, and they don't wear so well, and they just simply do not look so good. You do not get the same sense of enjoyment from wearing such a low value item. Now, I accept that when I was starting off, I could ill afford, to pay £25, £30, £40 and even more for a good quality tie. These days, I understand the value of high quality items, but I use my knowledge to seek them out at cheaper prices. I will buy all of my ties now these days from eBay, where I can get top quality silken ties for a fraction of the price of even a polyester tie at brand new prices. Same goes for pocket squares. I would rather these days wear a pocket square, which is a reclaimed piece of material, maybe from an old shirt, because it's going to be natural materials. If it's cotton, it's going to look better, feel better than this shiny polyester effect. And I think the worst offender are scarves. Now, I always wear natural material scarves, because polyester scarves, they tend to be very fluffy and they will leave bits of lint on the collars of all of your jackets, all of your overcoats, and they're a hateful experience to own. So for me, I regret buying so many synthetic ties and pocket squares and scarves over the years. I wish at an earlier stage in my sartorial development, I realized the value of quality over quantity. Instead of buying 5 polyester ties, I should have pooled that money and bought one good quality silk one, or even better, gone to eBay, and I could probably have bought 5 silk ties for the price of 5 polyester ties if you use your brain to do the work for you. Now, the next items, which I really regret buying, and it saddens me to say that, are this pair of black combat style, amazingly good quality Goodyear welted boots, which I actually bought from Clark's, which is an old heritage British company, and they did an experimental period by making these handmade boots, and they're called Craft Masters, and they are great quality, very well made here in the UK. But I gotta be honest, I really get no occasion to wear them these days. For whatever reason, maybe a bit of throwback heritage, I thought to myself, I need to buy a pair of black combat style boots. Maybe it's because I was in the military and I was very accustomed to wearing this style of boot. But I bought them. I did get them at a very low price actually, but I bought them, and whilst they are amazing quality, great boots, they will last a lifetime, I never wear them because, you know, they're a black cap toe combat style boot, which is quite high up the foot with a very rugged, chunky commando style sole. They just don't fit into my lifestyle. You know, I don't get the opportunity to wear these sort of boots. And black is a very inflexible colour when it comes to casual footwear. If these were brown, I would likely wear them very often. But because they're black, they just don't work, because black is quite an austere colour with not a lot of contrast. So if you wear it, as I often do in the outdoors like this, a brown boot would be so much better, but black tends to just not work for me. And as a result, when I fished these boots out this morning, they were covered in a thick layer of dust. I cannot remember the last time I wore them. It is a crying shame, if not a criminal act, that boots of this quality are not being worn. Who knows, I may get to wear them in the future. They do look great, but at this point, I really regret buying them. Now, the final item which I regret buying is this here. And it is the boss hat of them all. It is a Homburg hat. Now, the Homburg really is the king of hats. It is this big, dominant hat that when you wear it, it commands attention and respect from people who meet you. And it adds about 3 to 4 inches to your height because the crown is quite tall. It's a wide-brimmed hat. It's been worn by legends in the history of the hat world, from kings and emperors to, you know, Winston Churchill himself. I think the Homburg was his favourite hat. And actually I got into Homburgs because a close friend of mine, Tim, from the Big Pretty Man channel, he sent me a bit more of a eccentric Homburg hat, and I really loved it. I don't wear it a great deal, but it's a wonderful hat for special occasions. So I thought to myself, I should purchase for myself a more practical daily Homburg, and I got myself this black Homburg hat. The good news is I didn't spend a pile of money. I bought it from eBay, pre-owned, and it was, you know, it is in immaculate condition. It says handmade hat here in England, so it's a good quality hat at some point. I'm pretty sure I spent about £20 on it, so the heart doesn't bleed, or the wallet on this occasion. But the simple fact is, this hat is just too prominent and too dominant for the lifestyle which I lead. Now, I do love wearing a hat, I have to admit. I tend to wear a sort of short brim fedora, trilby style hat, or flat caps generally. And if I want a really smart signature hat, it will be the bowler, which is my favourite hat of all time. However, the Homburg largely goes unworn because, quite simply, a bit like the boots, it doesn't fit into my lifestyle. If I walk down the street wearing this hat, you know, people would be running from my path screaming, because it's not something which is seen very often in the environment in which I lead my life. So tragically, even though I love the hat, it really doesn't fit with my lifestyle, and in hindsight, I certainly regret buying it. Okay folks, those were the 8 items which I regret buying because they were money wasted in effect. I don't use them, I don't wear them, and they lie dormant, waiting for the moment when they will find their renaissance in my sartorial journey. So to save yourselves making these errors, I would suggest you ask yourself 4 questions before you make that sartorial purchase. Firstly, does it suit you? A bit like my hat. If it's not something that looks good on you, or my glasses, right? If you don't think it looks right, even though it's cool and trendy at the time, you see all the sort of influencers buying them and wearing them. If it doesn't suit you, you're probably not going to wear it, so don't bother. The next question is, does it fit you? Make sure it fits you, and, you know, never ever buy an item which is a little bit too small with the mental sort of idea you're going to slim down to fit into it, or a little bit too big because you like that extra bit of space. It never happens. You never get down to the weight that you need to be to fit into that jacket or that suit. Always make sure that the item fits you before you buy it. And then ask yourself, what's the quality like? Now, you might love the look of that tie, but if it's polyester, it's not high quality. If it's not high quality, it's not going to last, it's not going to look good, and you're never going to get the satisfaction out of the ownership journey that you would if you buy a quality item in its place. So if it's not high quality, don't bother. And finally, ask yourself, how often are you going to wear this thing? I love those boots. Those Craftmaster boots are absolutely glorious, but I never wear them. They do fit me. They do suit me. They are of high quality, but they fail the how often am I going to wear them test. So always make sure you ask yourself, okay, they're great, but when are you going to wear it? It's a bit like buying that black dinner tie, that black dinner jacket. If you don't go to black tie events, don't bother, right? Buy one if and when you need one in the future, but do not buy one just because you may have to, or you like the look of it. If you can pose yourself those 4 questions before you make a purchase, you're going to save yourself the mistakes that I have made. By wearing a £3,000 mistake around on my wrist today, it reminds me to be a little more careful in the future. So there we go. If you've enjoyed this video, tell me what items you have bought that you regret. I'd love to hear that I'm not the only sartorial idiot out there. If you've enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you'd like to see more like this, click the subscribe. If you'd like to support the channel, you could leave me a comment, you could drop me an email with a question of your own. You could buy me a coffee, or you could even become a patron. My patrons get additional video content each week, and you'll find the links on how to access all of those things in the show notes below. So until the next time, take care. Don't you make any mistakes. Learn from mine, and I will see you again very soon.